Okay, so now we're going to learn about fractions, decimal to a decimal, or a decimal to percent, because there's some numbers that are easier to understand and read given different forms. For instance, it's a lot easier to understand 50% rather than 1/2, or a better example would be 5% or 1/20th. Which would you rather look at? You'd rather look at 5%. So we'll talk about how to get that fraction to a percent. We'll also talk about if decimals are easy to deal with because they're like money, so we'll get those fractions to decimals and be able to compare them. So you should have gotten from your teacher a little foldable house, and you should have labeled it this way. If you haven't, go ahead and pause the video and label it. This would be fractions, this percents, and this decimals. This will be fraction to decimal, and how do you do that? Fraction to percent, and how you do that. Decimal to fraction, and how you do that. And decimal to percent, and how you do that. And you're going to take your notes on here and do some example problems and try to use as much as you can write on here to make sure that you understand how you do different types of problems. As you open up the inside flaps, you'll have percent to fraction and percent to decimal. And so as we're going through each part, I'm going to just talk about the title, and you'll need to put it in the appropriate place. Okay, so let's start with fraction to decimal, because it's much easier to look at a decimal and know where it goes than it is a fraction. With fractions, you have to find a common denominator, you have to build models. With decimals, it's just like money. So you're going to, the steps, and write this in your notes, are to rewrite an equivalent fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. And use place value to rewrite as a decimal. That's step 2. So this is what that looks like. If you have 9/20ths, well, place value, whenever you're saying decimals, and we'll go over this in a minute, you're saying tenths, hundredths, thousandths. So to write it as a decimal, you need to have a denominator that's tenths, hundredths, or thousandths. Well, it's not going to make sense to go to tenths, because you can divide this by 2, but you can't divide 9 by 2. So the next thing you'd want to go to is 100. And the scale factor to get from 20 to 100 is times 5. And we know from fractions, whatever you do to the bottom, you do to the top. And so this is times 5. And 9 times 5 is 45. Now, if I say that, if I pull this over and that's 45 hundredths, I don't want to simplify at this point, because I want to say 45 hundredths. And 45 hundredths as a decimal is like 45 cents. This is like 45 cents out of $1 is 45 cents. And it's 45 hundredths. That's how you say it with place value. You learn this in elementary school. Lots of focus on place value. Now this is still under fraction to decimal. And here's 3 problems for you to give it a shot and try. Know that whenever you're going from 4 to 100, it's times 25. And whenever you're going from 8, it's 25. And whenever you're going from 8 doesn't go to 10. 8 doesn't go to 100. 8 goes to 110. 8 doesn't go to 100. 8 goes to 1,000 by 125. So make sure that's your scale factor, and then I'll let you figure out 20 times what is 100. So finish these off and show using scale factor what the equivalents are, and then using place value talk what the decimal is. Okay, so I put the answers up here, and what we've got is this goes, we did 25 hundredths. This goes by 125, by 125, 625, say it, 625 thousandths. So I would write it 0.625, okay, 625 thousandths. Now, before We looked at ordering fractions, and you guys got real good at doing it, and using models, you'd easily be able to see that 5/8 is bigger than 1/4. But if you're just looking at decimals, 0.25, 0.625, then it's easy to see by place value that 5/8 is a lot bigger. So you're going to like comparing and putting on a number line decimals better than fractions. And then you've got times 5, 5 hundredths. You'd write that 0.05, and it's real important to know that that's different from 0.5. 0.5 is 1/2, and 1/20th is a lot smaller than 1/2. Okay, so you're going to use this decimal place value chart to determine the value of each decimal number. So, like 6/10 would go here, right? 6/10. And then 2 and 8/10, that's how we say it. We don't say 2.8. We say 2 and for the decimal point, 8/10. 2 and 8/10 goes there. 625,000. 625,000. You always go with the last number where it goes to tell you the place value. 4 and 65 hundredths. So under decimal to fraction, you're going to write these notes. The first step is to use place value to rewrite as a fraction with a denominator of 10, 100, or 1,000. And then the second is now you do simplify the fraction. So an example of this would be 24 hundredths. So you'd write that as a fraction, 24 hundredths. Okay? Because this is in the hundredth spot, so you say 24 hundredths, same as 24 over 100. So you take 24 over 100, and you're going to simplify. And let's see, this simplifies by 2. Oh, actually by 4. Divide by 4, I get 6, and divide by 4, I get 25. So 6/25. That is how I go from decimal to fraction. And so I write it using place value, then I simplify. Simplify. Okay? So let's do one together. So say it. 5/10. So 5 over 10. This is my simplified category. Divide by 5, 1/2. So you guys do these two, and whenever you come back, we'll have the answers and see if your fractions match up to mine. Okay, so 875 thousandths, this is one of those that you're just going to have to remember. 875 thousandths, that's fine. Thousandths divides by what? 125. So divide by 125, divide by 125, you get 7/8. And then this has a whole number. So all of a sudden it's 5 and 48 hundredths. That decimal point means and. So I've got 5 and 48 hundredths. And that divide by 4, I get 12/25.